Hey everybody. Oh my gosh, welcome back to Allison Unfiltered. It's a little different setup right now, right? Kind of cool. I'm doing this from home at my office instead of the recording studio that we were doing it in. I wanted to be able to do this from home, and I'm in my pajamas. I bet you didn't even know that. You couldn't even tell, but I totally have pajama pants on. Like, that's the best part of this, of being able to do this and share with you guys, is that I can share from anywhere, anytime, doing it this way. And I like it a lot better. And I love my office and our shelves. And, you can see some of, like, you look back there, you can see some of the awards that we've gotten and stuff like that with Xyngular. So it's really cool. This is like my happy place. Like, aside from my swimming pool, the office is my favorite place in the whole world. So, last week was, I'm just going to dive in, and I'm going to keep this short this week because last week was really long. But we talked to Jamie last week, and we talked about suicide and the survival of it. And one of the things that I mentioned was that someone that she knows is struggling as a parent, being on the side of a parent with a child with addiction. Of course, my nose is going to itch, right? And it made me start thinking about, like, some of the things that my mom went through as a parent. And maybe there's some of you as a parent who have completely unruly children or whatever, and you're struggling with it. Gosh, I would love your comments on this, because I don't know what I would have done or if I would have handled the situation differently than my mom. And maybe it would have been different if my dad had been involved in my life at the time. But I was out of control. There was nothing wrong with my nose before I hit record. I don't know. Someone trying to tell me something? Is that what that is? Like when your nose itches? Like someone's trying to tell you not to tell this story? I don't know. Anyway, so my mom was a single mom from the time, 6 years old or so, 7. She married Jack when I was, like, my parents divorced when I was 2. My mom married Jack when I was 7. And he was around, they got divorced when I was, I think, about 14. And that's when the shit started hitting the fan, right? I remember, y'all, I don't know how my mom survived this. I remember her telling me that she was going to a party one night, right? And she had a candy apple red Volvo. It was like brand new. And my mom, she kept the keys to her car in the floorboard of her car. I was 14. She was gone. I wanted to go to a party. No one was around to take me. So what am I going to do? Just going to take mom's car, right? So I back it out of the driveway, and I'd driven here and there, I had a friend of mine, like the first car I ever drove was like, oh, what's that little Volkswagen convertible? The little, not the Bug, not a Volkswagen Bug, a Cabriolet. That's what it is. Volkswagen Cabriolet. I was like 14 when I drove that, and someone let me drive it down the street, and I thought it was really cool. So I'd driven before, not much, but I got the gist of it. So I got this candy apple red Volvo, 4-door Volvo, out of the garage, down the alleyway, and I knew the way to my boyfriend's house. And I knew, it wasn't my boyfriend, maybe it's just a guy I liked, but I knew he was having a party. Maybe it was down the street from my boyfriend's house, and I knew my boyfriend was going or something. Oh my gosh, Trevor, if you ever see these videos, you're going to know. You're going to remember this stuff. I don't know how I remember names like I do, but I totally do. So I'm driving, and I get to the street where the party is, and there's just cars lining the street, right? And I'm driving, and I see my boyfriend. And I look over, still driving. My foot is still on the gas. I look over, and then I look behind me. And I know those of you that are listening, I'm showing you what I'm doing. Like, I'm totally turning my head, looking behind me. And I crashed into a parked BMW. Okay. I managed to get the car home. The mechanic still doesn't know how, because I broke the A-frame in half. I hit the car. I hit this little parked BMW so hard that I broke the A-frame in half. And I remember like turning the wheel all the way to the left to be able to get the car to make a right-hand turn at a light I was at. Listen, by the grace of God, I got home safe that night. I don't know. And then my mom got home. And she was like, what happened to my car? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, like, right? I'm 14. I had no idea what happened to her car. Anyway, I fessed up. Oh my God, I got my ass beat. I mean, like, seriously, she was so mad. And she had every right to be mad. But, I was just a pissed off 14-year-old that had just gone through a divorce with my mom. And it wasn't a pretty divorce, I don't know if y'all realize this, but when you divorce someone, your kids go through that divorce too. So be sure you get them some counseling if you get a divorce. Just a little side note. So my mom just had an unruly teenager. I did what I wanted when I wanted. I was in middle school, 14 years old. I was skipping school. I was hanging out with drug addicts, and I didn't realize it. Like, I was the baby of the group. There was Michael and Tony and Phil, and there was a girl involved. I think her name was Nikki. And I used to go hang out with these people all the time. They'd pick me up from school. And I'm talking, they're like anywhere from like 18 to 23, 24 years old. So I was like the baby, right? I was the one that protected. I was like the protected one. Well, I met with this group of people. I met a boy named Braxton. And he's actually no longer with us on this earth. He passed away a few years ago. But he's somebody I'll never forget. I remember the first time my mom met him. I'm talking like Braxton had this like wild Metallica style mullet. And dressed like a rocker dude. And my mom, the first time my mom met him, like we all met at the mall. We were all mall rats. We all hung out at Prestonwood Mall in Dallas. And so, oh gosh, so many memories coming up in this. When my mom first met him, I'll try not to squirrel much, but it's going to happen. So I hope you can keep up. My mom's mouth dropped to the floor. Because to her, it was like meeting trash that her pretty daughter was going after, right? And so that's what she was tripping about. My mom, I love my mom, but my mom is all about appearances. It's always been that way. It just is what it is. So we met at a Pizza Hut, and I don't remember who was with her. Maybe Tommy was with her. And they met Braxton, and we ate, and things were fine. And Braxton and I started dating. Fast forward a little bit to like 15, I'm hanging out with these people, but I moved to Tyler, and Kelly and I, oh gosh, I hope Kelly's mom's not listening to this. Kelly and I would tell her mom we're going to the lake for the day, because we were 15. Kelly had her hardship license. So we would tell her mom we were going to the lake for the day, and we would drive to Dallas, and we would go pick Braxton up at his house, and we'd go drive around and go to Prestonwood Mall and go hang out and all that stuff, right? And I'd get to hang out with Braxton for a little while because, Braxton was only 15 as well. Maybe he was 16 yet, but I don't think he had his license yet. So I also had this, like, one of my first true love was Scott, and he was like the guy at, oh God, Scott, if you hear this, because I know we're still friends, I know we still watch each other's stuff. He was like the dude in the ice skating rink that was like the referee that like skated around in the center, like watching people, making sure they were doing the right stuff. I don't know if that's the right name for it. But I used to sit like the mall is 2 stories. So I used to sit up in the food court and, my parents would drop me off at the mall all the time. I would get dropped off at the mall with $5. That would buy me a pack of Marlboro Lights, right? And I finally got smarter and bought the Marlboro Light 100s because it was the same price for more cigarettes. But it would buy me a pack of Marlboro Lights, a Pepsi, and 2 tacos at Taco Bell. That's what $5 would get me when I was like 14. My parents would drop me off. I'd sit up top, eat a snack, and swoon over Scott. And then that's how I met like all the mall people and all the people we hung out with. And Scott's little brother, Eric. I still talk to them to this day. And it's really cool to like keep in touch with people. And so I'm trying to make sure that I go through this timeline properly. So when I was 15, it was spring break, and I wanted to go spend spring break with Braxton. This is where the story gets a little deep. So Braxton's dad, I didn't know he was one of the biggest meth dealers in Dallas. And so that's how Bobby and Tony and Michael and Phil all knew Braxton was because Zyle was their dealer, right? And Zyle has since passed away too. He died of cancer several years ago. I did get to go see him when he was in prison, though. As sad as it was that he was a drug dealer, he was really, really kind to me. He was always really kind to me. Every time I went there, he was just very respectful. And aside from being a drug dealer, he was a good guy, Changed his life after he got out of prison and became a really good dad to Braxton and a great grandfather to his grandson. So, he turned it around. So anyway, I decided I wanted to go spend spring break there. And I'm 15 years old, so I can't drive. My mom doesn't want to drive me to Dallas. So I decided to take the bus from Tyler. And here's the thing. I was so wild and out of control, and my mom was so wrapped up in her own life that, and I don't want to make this sound like my mom didn't care, because she did, but how do you control someone who's completely out of control, right? And I was completely out of control. So if she didn't let me do these things, I would figure out a way to sneak off and disappear and go do them, like I did when I was like 14 and disappeared. I think I told that story already, and disappeared for like 3 days, and they couldn't find me. My family finally found me at this apartment. So that's the thing, is they either let me do what I want, or I'd figure out how to do what I wanted, and I wouldn't tell anybody. So she let me take a bus to Dallas. Bobby and Tony and Michael picked me up from the bus station, and they drove me to Braxton's house, of course. We were all hanging out. Everything was cool. The second night that I was there, second or third night I was there. So I one of the things that I always wondered, like, I didn't know these people did drugs. I was that naive, and I didn't do drugs at this point. Like, I had smoked a little weed, and I had maybe at that point I had tripped acid and drank some, Bartles and James wine coolers and some Strawberry Hill. Who doesn't remember Strawberry Hill? That stuff was terrible, but it was so good at the same time. Anyway, I digress. So I got on a bus and I went there, and it was like 3 days in, and we went to sleep one night. Oh, I know what I was saying. I had no idea these people did drugs. They would stay up all night, and I would hang out with them, and I'd be like, I do not understand how you guys stay up all night. Like, I don't know how you stay awake like this. And they're like, oh no, we just do. I had no idea, y'all. I had no clue. And then one night Braxton came out he had gone in the bathroom, and he was in there for a little bit, and he came out of the bathroom, and he had blood on his, like, the inside of his arm. And I just kind of looked. I was like, why do you have blood on the inside of your arm? He was just like, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. and just kind of blew it off. And I still didn't catch on that these guys were shooting up speed. Like, I had no clue. How do you not know that stuff? Like, how are you that, I want to say hidden, but hidden wasn't the word, like protected. That, yeah, I didn't even know any of that. They never spoke of it around me. They didn't, I mean, I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but I mean, I guess that was their way of protecting me from it. I mean, they would have never done it in front of me or given it to me or anything. Like, I had no clue. I've said that a million times, but I honestly, I'm still, even at 47, I'm still shocked that that's the case. So we wake up one morning and I wake up to a flashlight in my face and a man saying, "Police, wake up. We need to see some ID." I've never been so scared in my life. Well, up until that point in my life, I'd never been so scared. I had these little like stuffed animals that I had, and I was 15. I didn't have a driver's license. I didn't have an ID. I didn't have any way to identify myself with these people other than I had these little, oh my gosh. Okay, you remember Spencer's a long time ago? Maybe it wasn't Spencer's back then or something, but you could get these little cards and you could put your picture on them, and they were like, oh, one of them was licensed to have sex. Another one was licensed to bitch. Another one was licensed to something. I don't know. I had like 4 different ones of these with my name on them and my picture. So that's how I identified myself with the police. And I had these little, stuffed animals that I carried with me everywhere. Bunny and Seymour. I remember names. I don't know how. But they ended up like cutting my stuffed animals open. I slept with these and stuff. They ended up cutting them open and ripping all the stuffing out, thinking that I had drugs in them. And this was like 5 o'clock in the morning. It was still dark outside. So we get up to go into the house. So Braxton lived in the garage apartment of his dad Zyle's house. So they like handcuffed Braxton. And, sorry, I'm reliving this too, and I don't think about this very often. So, they handcuffed Braxton, and I went into the living room, and I'm crying, and Zyle just looked at me, and he was like, "I'm so sorry, little girl. I'm so sorry." And that's what they always called me, little girl. Because I was like young, but Braxton was only like a year older than me, but he was, and I was mature for that age, but I don't know, I guess they just didn't see him as a little boy, and he was still a little boy. I mean, he was like 15 years old, 16. Anyway, so he's like, "I'm so sorry, little girl." And Zyle's girlfriend at the time, Kim, was sitting there, and I remember they had the hands cuffed behind their backs. The police, like, they had a decent house, but the police just, they trashed it. It was trashed. It was so, oh my gosh. I mean, there was shit everywhere. They tore up everything. I remember sitting there, Zyle and Kim were handcuffed, and they finally uncuffed Braxton, and I would hold cigarettes up to Zyle's mouth so he could smoke, and he was just shaking. And then at one point, the police were like, I mean, to me, it's a total being an asshole at the moment, right? In this moment. But they ended up playing a song on one of Zyle. I mean, he had super advanced high-tech stuff, so I don't know if it was like a CD then or whatever, but they ended up playing Don Henley's The End of the Innocents. So every time I hear that song, it puts me, and I don't hear that song that often, but it puts me back in that moment on that sofa, like, holding cigarettes for Zyle and freaking out, like, what are we going to do? And in the meantime, the police, Zyle's phone's ringing. And the police are answering the phone like they're him and telling people to come over. Yeah, come on. Yeah, come on. So then people get there to come buy drugs, and they're busting them as they're ringing the doorbell. And of course, Zyle's just like mortified that all his friends and buyers and whatnot are getting busted. But that, I mean, I get it now, right? I get why they did that. I mean, that's kind of smart. That's a good way to get people there and get a lot of people busted. But he was one of the biggest dope dealers in like the Garland, Dallas area. I mean, it's crazy. And I was wrapped up in the middle of all of this. And my mom had no freaking idea until the police made me call her. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Before I tell you that, I want to tell you about this bird that Zyle had. And it was an African gray, and his name was Alex. And he was mean as shit. Meanest bird ever. You could not touch him. But I always wondered why he made the sound that he always made. And this was before I knew there were any drugs involved or anything, right? And Alex, you know the sound, the sound of like a plunger coming out of a it's not the syringe, but the part of the shot where you like pull the plunger out, right? I don't even know what the word is. I never shot up, so I don't know the words. Alex would make that sound over and over and over because he heard it so much from people shooting up around him, right? Crazy town that bird did that. African grays are amazing birds. Danny had one for a little while named Smokey, and Smokey's actually still around. Smokey lives with Danny's ex's parents. So anyway, so they make me call my mom. And I don't remember what was said on that, but what I should have done is called one of my friends who was like my mom's friends who would have come into Dallas and picked me up, and I should have lied and said it was my parents. So I sit there waiting on the couch with everyone for 2 hours, waiting for my parents to come get me. They didn't take me to jail because I mean, it was obvious. I had no idea what was happening. I had not a clue what was going on. And my mom and my stepdad, well, he wasn't my stepdad at the time, but they were dating. They hadn't gotten married yet. My mom and Tommy drove to pick me up. And they got there, and my mother came to the door. And she spoke to the police officers for a few minutes. I don't know what was said. I remember hugging Zyle and Kim and Braxton and telling them I loved them. I didn't know when I was going to ever see Braxton again after that. And I got in the car, and my parents did not say a word to me. Not a single breath, not a word. I knew I was in deep doo-doo right then. Like deep doo-doo. Because silence is the worst, right? And that's a 2-hour drive home. I mean, hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. That's a long drive home in the back of Tommy's Volvo. Yeah, there's a thing about Volvos. Everybody had Volvos back then. We got home. I was grounded. Oh gosh, I was so grounded forever and ever and ever. And it was just a big mess. I will never forget that. I'll never forget those people. It turns out that I ran into Michael and Tony and Phil later in life in my mid-20s. And I couldn't believe I saw them again. I don't know where they are now. I don't know if they're in prison or what, but they were always really, I mean, those people were so good to me, but they weren't good people. Does that make sense? Like, they were the bad guys. They were totally the bad guys. You know, they were into drugs and drug dealing and theft, and I didn't know all this stuff until later. I didn't know who I was hanging out with and why my mom freaked out so much all the time. And now I get it as a parent, but I can't imagine like what she went through in her mind. I mean, like, what if the cops said, what if something had gone wrong and they would have shot everybody? Like, what if Xyla had pulled out a gun? I never saw anyone with any weapons, though, I can say that. But what if, right? I mean, drug busts go bad all the time. What if something like that happened? So that was 15 when my mom let me go stay with Braxton. And of course, my mom knew, I mean, she's not stupid. I was sexually active at the age of 13. So me going and staying with boys, it just was what it was. That's not something she was going to stop, because I was going to find a way to do it with or without her. And I proved that. And it was all to go stay with a boy at his apartment for a week. You haven't lost me. I'm just still in shock, like what I put my mom through, and what I put myself through too. You know, I mean, I don't know. I learned a lot of things on these trips. I learned a lot of things about people. I think I grew up a little bit more on each trip, especially the one in Dallas where Zal got busted. But I am so glad that God did not give me girls. Like, I think that's the biggest blessing. And, you know, Danny and I talked about trying to have another baby. At one point, I guess that kid would be like 8 or 9 years old at this point if we'd had one. Because I was really struggling with that. And as much as he didn't want to, I wanted to like have, this is totally off the subject, but I wanted to have a baby like the right way. I wanted to like get married and plan a baby and not have unplanned pregnancies, right? I don't regret my pregnancies. I love my kids. They're amazing kids. But I wanted to just do it in order, you know? Anyway, so yeah, and we both know, like, neither one of us really ever wanted girls, so we knew, like, that would end up being a girl. We're like, no, yeah, we should not chance that. So I don't know what I would have done if God had given me girls. I think it would be worse. I mean, the thing with our boys is we've given our boys a lot of freedom. They have plenty of rope to hang themselves, right? I think that if you helicopter parent, you're in trouble. If you hide things from your kids, you're in trouble. If you do the right things, you're in trouble. I think it just doesn't really matter what you do. Your kids are going to be who they are, and they don't come with instruction books. And sometimes it's not that they're not worth the fight. It's just that you're not going to win the war. At the end of the day, as a parent, you can only do so much and just love your kids and trust in God that He's going to take care of them. And you can only love them more. I mean, you just only love them from where you are, and pray that they don't make huge mistakes like you did. And maybe you didn't make any mistakes. Maybe you had an easy childhood. Maybe you grew up and it was the simple life. Lucky you. Seriously, lucky you if you grew up in a world where none of that bad shit's happened like it's happened to me and so many others. And I don't say that condescendingly. I mean that in all sincerity, like, lucky you that you grew up that way. Because having these stories that I tell, it doesn't make me cool. It doesn't make me special. It doesn't make me different. It makes me screwed up, just like everybody else that went through stuff like that too, you know. There's a camaraderie between all of us that are mentally jacked up from childhood trauma. Now, we talked about that last week with Jamie and how that childhood trauma affects everything. But I don't know, if you're a kid out there, like my best friend's going through some stuff with her stepdaughters. And it's 2 girls. And I'm like, she called me the other day and she was like, so I have the girls on the phone and I'm just going to let you have at it. And I knew what'd been going on. She's like, and this is what happened in addition to. And I'm like, these girls are going to end up in juvie. They're going to end up in prison and juvie because they don't have the sense to listen. Just like I didn't have the sense to listen. Kelly didn't have the sense to listen. Kelly and I were terrible when we were growing up, and I'm going to have her on. Oh my God. Like, our parents forbade us to talk to each other or see each other. Remember I told you Kelly would drive us, we'd go to Dallas and disappear for the day and tell everybody we were going to the lake. Like, we'd literally like put our bathing suits on and pack, and then we'd change clothes in the car. But like, Kelly and I got forbidden to hang out with each other, except for when we went to counseling together. Our mothers could not control us, and they tried. They tried with everything they had. They really did. But we had our own minds made up about what we were going to do and how life was going to be. And Kelly ended up, pregnant at 16, and just, I don't know. I'm lucky I didn't, for sure. So I guess the point of this is those of you out there that are struggling with kids, just love them. Just love them where they're at and always be there for them, because at the end of the day, I always knew no matter what, and my kids know this too, like no matter how twisted I get with my mom, I always know that I can come to her and I can come back to her and she'll be there to support me and hug me and love me, And so do that for your kids. If you can't control what's happening in their lives, ask God to help you keep them safe, right? And just love them and let them know that no matter how bad they screw up, no matter how many mistakes they make, that you're always going to be there and your love is unconditional. I think that's the biggest piece of this is loving your kids unconditionally, and most of us do. And dads out there, if you're a good guy, if you're a bad guy, stay away from your kids. But if you're a good guy and you haven't talked to your kids in a while, you should pick up the phone. Daughters, sons, pick up the phone. Seriously. Your kids need you. They need to know that they're loved. Same vice versa for moms. Moms that aren't involved, if you haven't talked to your kids in a while, pick up the phone. Call your kids. Make sure your kids know you love them. Make sure they know that they have a safe place to come to, even after they've screwed up. I think that's the biggest thing. I've hurt my mom. Mom, I'm sorry, publicly. I'm sorry for everything that I put you through as a teenager. I don't know how you survived it, and I don't know how I don't know. Well, I can't really say that. Maybe it's my fault you drank. I don't know. Maybe I did so much damage. I don't know, but that's not something I can carry on myself either, because life's all about choices and you have choices too. So, anyway, as a parent, it's hard. Raising kids is hard and it's a struggle, but there is light at the end of the tunnel and there is another side to it. And so stay strong, right? Stay strong. Stick to your guns, be consistent with your kids, love them where they're at, and I don't know, hopefully you got something from this. I'm sorry it was so bad, Mom. It was terrible. I want to make sure I hit everything on my notes. Yeah, I hit everything on my notes. I have this little sticky note. So, anyway, listen, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Look for Allison Unfiltered. And y'all, please share this with your friends. If this is something that you think someone else needs to hear, share it. Because you never know. You never know when. You never know when someone might need to hear something uplifting or something that someone else has been through that they survived, okay? So, anyway. Peace out, homies. I appreciate you guys listening very much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.